mutation theory, it's the mutations in the nucleus that are causing the dysregulated cell growth. You take that nucleus and put it into an enucleated normal cell.
Yeah, and there's no cancer.
No cancer. These cancer cells continue to ferment even in 100% of oxygen. Why are they doing that?
Yeah, the old bacteria,
about several billion years ago,
used to be very selfish and just think about itself. It used to grow on its own and didn't communicate with anybody.
Wolves in the wild rarely have cancer. The domestic dog, cancer is the number one killer of the domestic dog. He was diagnosed with an inoperable glioblastoma. They wanted to irradiate and poison him with the drugs. He said no. He was one of these naturalistic kind of guys. And he lived for 10 years. When people have heart attacks, they stop breathing. The heart seizes. Okay, the bloodstream immediately fills with these fermentation waste products, which are lactic acid. And the other one, which we now know, is succinic acid. Okay, wow. These two waste products. Now, if you don't start breathing in a short period of time, you're going to be dead. 12.5. You're down here in the prevention zone.
Nice.
Okay, so this is where Paleolithic man mostly lived.
Thomas Seyfried, what is it that you've committed your life to doing, Thomas?
Well, we're right now committed our lives to managing cancer effectively without toxicity, which is based on the science that I and others have done in this field.
You have a perspective on treating cancer and other metabolic diseases that others don't have. The mainstream, should I say?
Oh, yeah. Well, mainstream doesn't have it for sure. But it's based on science. I mean, my work is based on what Otto Warburg, the famous German scientist, said from the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. He clearly showed that cancer was a mitochondrial metabolic disease.
I think we have a mitochondria. Could one of my team bring in a mitochondria?
Well, you have a mitochondria in here. Oh, here we go.
You've got one each here.
Yeah, well, see, this is the little organelle that you see. It looks like a bean shape, but it's actually a tubular network. These are tubes, and they respond dynamically inside the cell to both internal activities as well as external activities. So you have to realize that at the time of conception, all of the mitochondria for the developing embryo are in the cytoplasm from the mother.
The cytoplasm.
The mitochondria are not in the nucleus, they're in the cytosol.
Oh, outside of it.
Outside of the nucleus, but in the cell body itself. So all of the mitochondria, they determine our destiny. They will determine how long you will live on the planet if you don't have an unfortunate accident or something like this. They have an expiration date. Different species die at different times. You don't find people living 400 years. Mice live about 2.5 years. Elephants live, as long as we do or whatever. But that's all determined by this organelle. So you can see I have wrinkles and this kind of thing. This is from living on the planet. And this is from wear and tear on this organelle, which allows us to make energy efficiently. Mm-hmm. So when this organelle starts to falter with age, you die. You die from old age. This organelle has to be protected and respected if you would like to live a normal lifespan. But in diets and lifestyles and the way we are today, we damage this organelle. And this organelle then can present itself, damage to this organelle, which is a tubular network inside the cell. But let me say something else. It not only controls the internal environment of the cell, it also controls the neighboring cells, the liver neighborhood, the lung neighborhood, the colon neighborhood, the brain neighborhood, the glial neighborhood, the neuron neighborhood, but they all come from the same origin in that cytoplasm. And they determine the overall metabolic health of your body. It's a systemic. They communicate with each other across cells, across tissues. I'll tell you, this organelle controls a lot of what that nucleus does. It tells the cell when to divide. It tells the cell when to slow down.
It's kind of like a brain, but also like an engine room.
It's kind of like that. Certainly, the brain part of it is really mysterious in the sense of how it controls the destiny of the cell in the body. Yeah, well, this is the organelle that becomes damaged. and it can be damaged in many, many different ways. For cancer is what we have spent a lot of our time on. And now we've moved into the whole chronic disease issue, because each chronic disease can have different manifestations of ill health to the mitochondria in a particular population of cells. But in the case of cancer, which is what we call the most serious of the chronic diseases, creating the most trauma, the most emotional distress. But we have clearly shown, based on many, many works, that multiple things from our environment can damage this organelle in a particular population of cells in a particular organ. Okay, you're breathing, I'm breathing. I take in oxygen. Oxygen serves as a final acceptor for electrons that allows ATP to come out of this little, and don't forget it's a tubular network.
And ATP is the energy currency.
It's the chemical energy currency. It allows enzymes to work. It allows all the metabolic machinery inside of a cell to work optimally.
So just to play this back to you so I know I'm clear, oxygen comes in because I breathe in, I then eat food. In that mitochondria, it does a process and it spits out ATP as the energy.
Well, and the waste products of a good energy metabolism would be CO2 and water. So when we burn gasoline in an engine of a car, we break down the octane, the carbon-hydrogen bonds in an octane, and we have an internal explosion that drives pistons. Okay, the exhaust is a lot of waste products from breaking down. We're doing the same thing inside the cell. We're combusting carbon-hydrogen bonds. And that combustion of carbon-hydrogen bonds is a graded process. So it's not an immediate explosion. You're breaking down the carbon-hydrogen bonds in a very precise way, producing ATP, which then drives the entire machinery of the neurons and the rest of the body.
What's the oncogenic paradox?
That was the paradox that was first put out by Albert Szent-Györgyi, a Hungarian scientist who received the Nobel Prize, I think, for vitamin C. He said he was very interested in cancer and living systems. He said there's a paradox. He said, we know multiple things in the environment can elicit cancer. We've identified these: oncogenic viruses, chronic inflammation, carcinogens, intermittent hypoxia, rare germline mutations. He said, we don't understand the common pathophysiological mechanism by which any of those provocative agents would elicit dysregulated cell growth, which is cancer. When you talk about cancer, what is cancer? It's cell division out of control. It's dysregulated cell growth. This organelle determines when cells should divide and when they should not divide. It regulates the destiny of the cell. So what happens when this organelle becomes chronically impaired? It falls back on these ancient pathways, pathways that existed before oxygen came into the environment, where all the cells were dysregulated in the growth because they didn't have this regulatory system, which is the mitochondria coming from a bacteria.
So let me play that back to you in a way, just so I make sure I understand.
I know it can be kind of deep.
Okay, so in this mitochondria here that I have in front of me, there is an ancient, because this came from a fusion of bacteria a long, long time ago. Yeah, that old bacteria,
about several billion years ago,
used to be very selfish and just think about itself. It used to grow on its own and didn't communicate with anybody, had its own way of growing and multiplying that was really not in cohesion with anything else. That is still in there somewhere. And although now, in its modern form, because there's been that fusion, it grows thinking about the wider organism, when it becomes damaged, it falls back on that old selfish way of growing. And that's kind of what can cause cancers. So if there's stresses on this, which could be all the carcinogenic things you described, then sometimes this falls back on that prehistoric selfish way of growing where it doesn't think about the wider organism.
You and I hold our breath or have a heart attack. Let me tell you something. This is really remarkable. And this is another piece of information that got us on this whole thing. When people have heart attacks, they stop breathing. The heart seizes. Okay, the bloodstream immediately fills with these fermentation waste products, which are lactic acid, and the other one, which we now know, is succinic acid. Okay, wow. These two waste products. Now, if you don't start breathing in a short period of time, you're going to be dead. And you die because the neurons in your brain cannot sustain this kind of fermentation energy for very long. As soon as the heart, you give them cardiac massage and whatever, the guy's heart starts beating again. The waste products of lactic acid and succinic acid go away. They disappear because you're breathing now. You don't need to ferment when you have oxygen in the environment. And the mitochondria can utilize the oxygen in the environment. Cancer cells, to Warburg said, it's the weirdest thing. These cancer cells continue to ferment even in 100% of oxygen. Why are they doing that? And he speculated that this organelle was damaged. Irreversible damage to the organelle happened in these cancer cells. He didn't have an electron microscope at the time. He didn't have the sophisticated tools that we have today. So he projected that all on biochemistry. At that time, he was a biochemist, and he said, should not produce fermentation if you have oxygen should shut that off, and these guys should return to a normal metabolic homeostasis. And he said that's because there's something irreversibly damaged in this organelle. So a lot of people attacked him, and they said, oh, we don't have any evidence for that. Here's the beautiful thing. Some cancer cells continue to take in oxygen and make ATP. Therefore, Warburg must be wrong. We showed that. We showed the cancer cell takes in oxygen, but it's not making energy through ATP in any great amount. It's using it for ROS, these radicals that further damage and cause the DNA mutations that everybody is chasing. It's all downstream effects of damage. Because of our technology, we are still Paleolithic man, and our biology has allowed us to store energy efficiently because of times of famine. We are now in a new environment where we have massive amounts of highly processed carbohydrates, inactivity, emotional stress. We have poor sleep habits. You pile all those together with the exposure to carcinogens and whatever, and you chronically damage this organelle. And in some organs, you can get breast cancer, if it's a lung, if it's whatever it is, that organelle becomes chronically damaged in some populations of cells in a particular organ, and you can elicit dysregulated cell growth as the result of that. What I find is in the paper that we have with the chart, if you can keep your mitochondria healthy, because don't forget, Paleolithic man, our ancestors from 500,000 years ago, or modern men, like you said, in these countries, living according to traditional ways with minimal interference from modern diet and lifestyle issues, have lower amount of cancer in general. And this is what Albert Schweitzer found, the famous humanitarian physician. He was specifically looking for cancer in African tribes. And he said, remarkably, it's extremely low. What are these guys doing where Western society has a lot of cancer and these Africans have living according to the traditional ways? So they have a lot of exercise. They're eating all organic foods. They're not under the same kind of stress or exposure to chemicals that modern societies have. And you find out you have very low cancer. Like, for example, dogs are all evolved from the wolf. Wolves in the wild rarely have cancer. The domestic dog, cancer is the #1 killer of the domestic dog. What is the dog doing that the wolf? The wolf is out running around eating natural foods. The dog is in an apartment somewhere, gets a dog walker once a day, right? And the next thing, the dog is obese and full of cancer. So I built the GKI. So let me tell you the story. There was a woman, an American woman, a lawyer, Trudy DuPont, who developed a kind of a brainstem tumor. And after I wrote my book, that book there, that's my only book. Anyway, Trudy wanted to use this metabolic therapy. She stayed alive much longer, over 10 years with this. She eventually passed away, unfortunately. But so I was measuring, because we knew that the tumor cells needed sugar to grow. Otto Warburg showed that, and many other people showed that. And they can't burn ketones because you need a very efficient mitochondria to burn ketones for energy. Our normal cells can burn ketones for energy, and that gives us tremendous, we can actually breathe lower oxygen, more energy if you can burn ketones efficiently in this organelle. But if the organelle is damaged, they can't use the ketones. They can't burn fatty acids or ketones, which stores lipid drops. It's one of these big papers here. Stephen, you can't believe how people misinterpret information. They see droplets of fatty acids in the cytoplasm and say, you see, the cancer cell needs all that fatty acid. No, they can't. It's there to protect them. If they try to burn it, they blow this up and die. So there is a storage of fat. They can't burn fatty acids or ketone bodies. So I knew cancer needed glucose, and I knew cancer couldn't burn fatty acids or ketones because this organelle is broken. So I'm measuring glucose and ketones independently in Trudy. She's doing the finger prick thing, sending me the information back and saying, oh, here's my glucose, here's my ketones.
Okay, so I have a ketone glucose reader in front of me.
Right.
If I put my blood on this strip, it tells me my glucose levels. If I put my blood on this strip, it tells me my ketone levels. So my sugar by my ketones. So if I did my glucose measure now on this little reader here.
Let's see what your GKI is.
Oh, you want me to do it? Okay.
Okay, what you had a glucose, you had a ketone with 0.4 millimolar.
Yeah.
Okay, what was your sugar? So we can do the division right now and tell you what you have.
You can get these little ketone.
Oh yeah, it's a keto mojo. And you can also get them now for wow, this guy's skilled at doing this.
I travel with one of these, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So I have one all the time.
Wow.
90.
90? Okay, so you have to divide, You're not getting doesn't this give you the push button and give you the GKI right away? Because the new ones have it. So you have to divide 90 by 18, and you get a number.
5.
5. So divide 5 by 0.4.
12.5.
Okay, so here you are. 12.5. You're down here in the prevention zone.
Ah, nice.
Okay, so this is where Paleolithic man mostly lived. Paleolithic man lived in the yellow-green zones because they didn't have access to all of the things that would drive up your blood sugar and keep your ketones. When your blood sugar goes through the roof, your ketones are really low because insulin is now driving it up. So that's good. 12, huh? So I did the carnivore diet for a week, eating big ribeyes. People like Pablo Kelly from Devon, England, he had the glioblastoma. He didn't take any radiation or chemo. He just did metabolic therapy. He lived for 10 years. He was diagnosed with an inoperable glioblastoma. They wanted to irradiate and poison him with the drugs. He said no. He was one of these naturalistic kind of guys. And he lived for 10 years, and the tumor became operable. He had 4 debulking surgeries on an originally described inoperable cancer, cut out 4 times, because once we put the metabolic therapy, the demarcation of the tumor, whoa, a neurosurgeon says, I think I can get this out. But he never got rid. He lived with it for 10 years, had a couple of kids. He died from a cerebral hemorrhage on the last debulking surgery. He never died from the tumor. Okay? So according to the somatic mutation theory, it's the mutations in the nucleus that are causing the dysregulated cell growth. You take that nucleus and put it into an enucleated normal cell.
Yeah, and there's no cancer.
There's no dysregulation.
It must be something else.
Then you take the nucleus of the normal cell and put it into the cytoplasm of a tumor cell, and you get dysregulated cell growth.
So it must be something other than the nucleus.
Yes, the mitochondria. We have a lot of evidence. I think people should feel encouraged. I think we have given hope to the hopeless. And I think that's empowering. And the goal here is not to make $1 billion. It's just to know that you've kept all these poor souls alive longer than they were projected to be. And I think there's power there. And that keeps us going. Because when we see more and more people coming to me, I get emails back from people 3 or 4 years ago. And I said, gee, I thought you were a goner. And he says, oh, I'm doing really well. Just came back from a vacation with my wife. Well, that's empowering. I said, well, that's good. And don't forget, Stephen, all of our research money comes from private foundations and philanthropy.
So this is something I actually wanted to say in this episode was, if you're listening to this conversation now and you've gotten to this point, do feel free to go into the comment section and just offer some support and some love to other people who are struggling, because it can be a very lonely experience the minute you find out you've got a diagnosis, and off you go into the internet, into podcasts, into AI to try and figure out what you can do. So yeah, do share things that have helped you, point at different resources that are rigorous, and offer emotional support to those that are in the comment section. That would be a wonderful thing. Thomas, thank you so much for all that you do. You're an absolute warrior for pushing the science into the world, and for fighting for these people that don't have the tools. And I don't think I've ever seen a comment section quite like it in terms of the gratitude that people have for the work that you're doing. It is remarkable work. Long may you continue to do it.
Thank you very much. And you play a very important part on this, because this information is not disseminated to the population. And it's the population of people that will eventually make the change. So they're going to want this, especially when we keep publishing more and more case reports of successful cases. And the system will change. And we just have to modify what we have to make it better. And I think that's what keeps us going. So I have no plans of stopping this anytime soon. My students are all excited about this. They're learning about it at Boston College. So this is a big emphasis that we have, and we continue to do it. And again, scientific literacy is so important for how you navigate through life. And thank you very much for your show, and we'll keep pushing this as hard as we can.
Thank you.